Hi. 2 weeks ago I put out a video called Unmasking before, during and after my autism diagnosis, or something like that. And I wanted to do a follow-up video, and I thought it was going to be about the diagnostic process itself, and that's not to say that I won't do one on that. I think I will. Maybe this is going to be more of a series. But from all of the comments that I received, and thank you for sharing back to me so beautifully all of your stories and your experiences. Yeah, everything that you shared was amazing, and I'm emotional, because not just because of the heartbreaking bits in there, because I hear you and I see you, and it's an awful lot for an individual to go through, but also because it made me feel so unbelievably connected, and so just moved, and it was such a revelation to me, I guess, that there's something in this, there's something in us all connecting and sharing our experiences and the way that we view the world and stuff like that. There's a strength in that, and if there's anything that the world needs, or that we need, first of all, it's that you sometimes can't even put words to, but there's something powerful there. And a lot of the comments also alluded to a lot of comments also mentioned that you hope I find my strength and that I'll be all right, and all of those things. And I appreciate those comments so much also, but it made me realize that I did focus very much on my journey so far and a lot of the sort of painful bits. And the reason I've made notes today is because, unlike last time where I kind of just wanted to flow with it, because I know my story up until now quite well at this point, in this video I want to share a little bit more about the here and now, and a lot of strength that I've found. And so in order to sort of foster connection and for us to be able to relate to each other, I decided to make that first video more about the stuff that I'd experienced, so that the right people will connect to that and think, oh, I see myself in your story, and hopefully we can foster strength between us in sharing that. But then you'll sort of also know if you might connect to other videos that I'm going to make. So I don't know if that made any sense. But that's kind of why I focused a bit more on the past and a bit more on the painful bits. But that's not to say that that's what I focus on in my day-to-day, because it isn't. I draw strength from it, and I see a lot of it as super painful lessons, but lessons that I've then sort of managed to work into positive changes. First of all, being seen and understood by each other, laying that groundwork has been a good start for part 1, and now part 2, I kind of want to open up a little bit more about some of the power that I've found. I got a little bit overwhelmed there, and I had to look back at what I'd filmed so far, which I never do, because I don't have patience for that. But you know, when there's so much that you want to say or achieve, and your brain just goes, oh, make sure it's all in there, and then with all of that floating around, you just get overwhelmed and don't know what you ended up even saying. So I needed to just take a little breather. All right, so today I really want to talk about the deeper side to what they label as autism, or a highly sensitive person. You might not be diagnosed as autistic or be self-diagnosed even. You might just think that, I know that I'm a very sensitive person, more sensitive to the mainstream that gets portrayed in, you know, on TV or in the media or at society as we see it. The thing is though, we look at society and we have this perception that we think the majority are like this or are like that. Truth be told, I think, especially with the rise of the internet and people sharing their own realities, we don't have a clue what's going on in people's minds. And I know that I even had myself fooled in the past, convincing myself that I wasn't this or I wasn't that, and to fit in and all of that. So we just don't know. But if you feel that you have a deep sensitivity, maybe you're super creative, or you have a connection to nature or animals, you know that there's something that feels a little bit more sensitive or connected than what maybe other people portray, then this is for you. I don't like to sort of pigeonhole. I love pigeons, but I don't like to pigeonhole or to use labels too much, because I think that that can sort of alienate and shut out or close off. And actually, oh my god, the fridge is now making, I really hope you can't hear that, because it's quite distracting for me and it might be distracting for you. I think I'm gonna have to actually turn my fridge off whilst I film this. So this is going well. I'm just gonna flow, I'm flowing with it. What's that now? Anyway, if there's one thing I know is that you get it, so that's okay. So yes, if you feel like you're a little bit more sensitive, maybe there's something different that you can't quite explain, but you just know, then this one's for you. But I do also want to say, before I begin, I want to preface this with an understanding that this doesn't apply to everyone. This video won't be for everyone, I won't be for everyone, and that's totally okay. What I'm sharing is my own perception, it's my own experiences, and it's how I see the world. And I do not expect this to be taken as I think I'm telling the truth, the greater truth that everyone has to live by. Absolutely not. I have no expectation of that. And so if you don't connect with this and you think that is really not for me, Michaela, then that's okay. And I completely respect differences in perceptions or opinions. And I think it's healthy that we aren't all just exactly the same. Because even if we think about art, for example, or fashion, or well, any kind of new ideas, that they wouldn't exist unless we all thought slightly differently and had different experiences and perceptions. So it's okay to disagree or to see things slightly differently. And I think the more we learn to accept that, the better the world will become, in all honesty. If you did connect with my previous video, then chances are that you might just connect with this one. So I'm really happy and grateful that you're here, and I really hope you get something from it. I'm still a little bit uncertain exactly where it's gonna go, but let's see. So if we sort of go back a little bit again, when I was little, I was a super sensitive, curious, nature-loving child, and I remember that. And the more I spend time on my own in nature, a lot of those sort of memories and feelings, and sometimes I'll even smell a certain flower or just something in the wind, and it will take me back to my younger years, and I'll think, oh wow, I remember this feeling, I remember that smell, and it makes me feel really connected to something. And before my mum became spiritual, well actually I think we're all spiritual, but before she sort of started leaning into that, when I was maybe a few years old. She was a dental nurse and was kind of living a pretty sort of straight down the line, ordinary life in Sweden. And I have some very vivid memories of sitting down on the sofa with her and speaking about God. Now, let me just preface this with, I don't follow a specific religion. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And I have had some quite curious things happen in my life when I was a lot younger and now more recently. And so I kind of just want to take you through that journey and see if you relate. And I'd love to hear if you guys have any stories. Please tell them if you want to share them, because I love this stuff. I am spiritual, very openly so, but there was a long time when I really suppressed that, so I'll get into that as well. So I remember having conversations, or not conversations, I was sort of just channeling something about God and our sort of reason for being here, and I can't remember the details, but I do remember this happening, and it was really intense. And you might relate to this, especially as autistic people. We have a lot of special interests and we like to info dump, and I know that I was doing it yesterday because I went out for this long nature walk. I went out for a trek of like 4 hours accidentally. I was only supposed to be out for like an hour. And it was just like a perfect day, and the weather was amazing, and there was butterflies everywhere, and the birds were singing, and I just felt super connected. I was like, I can't go home when I'm having this time. It's amazing. And when my partner came home from work, of course, I just want to tell him about absolutely every single tiny little detail of what happened, because I'm like, this makes me feel amazing, and you sort of get a high from it in a way. And it was that similar feeling, but almost as if I was like just channeling something through. Anyway, Mum then gets quite into spirituality, and in 1997 we moved to India. And I mentioned it in my first video that I believe she was on a sort of mission to find her place and to find answers for why she felt different. And yes, you could look at that from a standpoint of someone who's undiagnosed, who doesn't understand why they're different, but I also look at it from a spiritual perspective of searching for that connection, knowing there's something else, and this square life just is not, it's not connecting with that, and I miss that, and I'm seeking that something that I just do not know how to put words to, I don't know how to describe. And so we moved to India when I was 7 in 1997, right? And we moved around a few different ashrams. Now, I'm not someone who has a guru, nor do I necessarily personally believe that I want to just focus too much on one thing or another. I'm quite fluid in my perspective, and I don't really put anyone or anything so much on a pedestal now, well, aside from animals and nature and stuff, because I just think it's absolutely amazing, but in terms of gurus. But we did live in some ashrams where a particular guru was being celebrated, let's say. And I, as a really curious 7-year-old, got completely immersed in this, running around barefoot, eating delicious spicy food with my hands. You know, I know that in our community, people are sort of either very opposed to food textures and tastes and smells and things like that, or quite the opposite. And I'm the opposite. So I really like to be stimulated by my senses when it comes to smell and texture, but in a way that I choose it, not in a way that it's enforced on me. Then I can also get very overwhelmed by smell and quite grossed out, in all honesty. But maybe because I had it introduced to me at such a young age. No, I don't know, because I do think a lot of us are born with that sensitivity already. Whatever, I'm rambling, sorry. I loved that, and I immersed myself in this culture and the people, and I was fascinated. I mentioned in my first video that I'm really fascinated by people watching or just learning about culture and society and how things work. And I think in the beginning, when I was younger, in my 7-year-old super open, curious mind, where I hadn't yet been sort of traumatized into a box where I was super scared, I did that out of sheer love and curiosity for people and for wanting to live a full life and experience. And so I threw myself into morning rituals of my own. I had a little, oh my gosh, the word's escaping me now. What word am I looking for? Anyway, I set up this little table with candles and crystals and flowers, and I would sort of give little offerings of fresh flowers every morning, just how they do in India. And I would sing these bhajans, and I would sort of say a prayer, and I would go through this ritual every single day, every single morning, and I think evening. And I had some quite curious things start to happen that I can't explain. And I hadn't thought about this for quite a long time. On this altar, I also had some pictures of various religious entities. You know, you've got Krishna and Ganesh and whatnot. And I also had a few photos of this spiritual guru that we were sort of following. And he was said to be the reincarnation of the one before him, whose ashrams they were, and then it was sort of passed down. Kind of like the Dalai Lama, if you think about it. But I don't want to make the comparison because I know how people feel about this. So try not to sort of judge this with thoughts about gurus and the positive or the negative, but more just kind of the deeper story behind it. So anyway, I'm going through these daily rituals, and there's this powder called vibhuti, which is like a grey powder, I think made from the ashes of certain plants, I think, that have been burnt. Anyway, as part of this sort of sacred practice, you put some on your forehead and you put some on your tongue. I don't know how healthy it is to ingest it in hindsight. After a few weeks, I think it was weeks, I can't really remember timescales, this powder starts to appear growing out of one of these pictures. I know it sounds to some completely out there, let's say, but it was in a way that, and also it wasn't mold. Before you say, was it mold? No, because this has a really specific smell and a very specific taste. And my mum can also remember this happening, and there would be no way of putting it on the picture in the way that it was growing out of it. There's no way you could put it on there and it would stay, or glue it on, or in my mind. So anyway, this started happening, and it kept on happening. It kept coming out. And this isn't the first, I'm not the first person who's had this experience. And I have never ever told this story out loud before, apart from between me and my mum. I've never told the story. In fact, when I was going through all the stuff that I spoke about in my first video, I was suppressing all of this. I hadn't thought about this in years. I completely shut off any spirituality because I kind of blamed that for my mum's challenges and struggles mentally. I did blame that for a long time because I didn't understand what was going on, and it was very, very painful. And I thought, well, you know, she was always into meditation and all of this stuff, and if that's what she was doing, then that can't have been good. And I just ran a million miles from anything that resembled spirituality. So now, having opened up these conversations with mum again and her remembering it too, it feels really comforting. That's the only thing I can say. I don't feel like the chosen one. It's not like that. There's something greater that we have the ability to connect to. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I think that we can foster and create an amazing amount of positive energy in between us by simply relating to one another and finding strength and connection and feeling that love, because that's what it comes down to, is love. We've been feeling fear for so long, and all we want is safety and love. And if we can create that, then who only knows the ripple effect? Who only knows? So I've always had a feeling, even through all the tough years, I've always had a feeling of I must have a guardian angel, because how the heck have I always managed to survive? How have I always managed, well, for a long time anyway, to how did I drag myself through university? How did I manage to get that job? Yeah, fair enough, you know, I only lasted for a year or 8 months or even 6 months before I completely burnt out, but I did it, and then something else will come along. I kind of, even though I've had intense moments of wanting to give up and feeling like a complete failure and as if I don't want to be here anymore, there's always been what I can only describe as a glimmer of light that I've anchored myself to, and that has kept me going. Even when I've had no direction or anyone or anything really supporting me, there's been that thing, the thing that you can't put words to. So I told the story of when 4 years ago I quit drinking and I decided to finally look at myself in the mirror and dare to face those faceless monsters, the dark, horrible stuff that I'd been suppressing, to look at all the things I'd done that I weren't proud of, that I was running away from, to look at times where I've been let down by others and times when I've let others down, to forgive other people and also to forgive myself. And the more I sort of scratched away at those layers, the more I dared to ask, what's the lesson here, instead of feeling sorry for myself. The more that I dared to let go of stuff that wasn't serving me, because at the end of the day, I am the only constant in my life. Why would I put the power externally? Why wouldn't I dare to say, I deserve a life that feels good for me and my nervous system? I deserve a soft life. I don't have to chase somebody else's dreams that I can't even pinpoint what they are. It was like waking up from a deep sleep. So since those things happening when I was younger, and then having completely blocked it out, but still having this feeling of like, there's something more to life. There's something other. I just noticed that like the layers have started falling away naturally after a while. So now I mentioned that I don't wear much makeup anymore. I've switched everything out to natural products that I'd use in my home. I'm obsessed with nutrition for my body, because I want to, what I did with that altar when I was younger is how I want to also treat myself. I want to feel gratitude for my body instead of judging whether it's good enough. And I'm crying now, not because I feel that way still, but because I'm so grateful that I've switched that. And I want everyone to feel that, you know. I don't feel great about myself every day, no. But when I feel those moments of like, I'm being hard on myself, I don't like how that looks on my body, or blah, blah, blah. I let myself feel it for a minute. I don't suppress that. I go, that is shit. But then I go, okay, well, I'm so grateful that I am healthy, because I don't know about you, but being really sensitive means that when I get stressed, sometimes the fallout doesn't happen immediately. It can, because I feel burnt out and my eyes get extra sensitive to light and stuff like that. But sometimes after a few weeks, I get autoimmune flare-ups. Anything from infections to eczema. I've been struggling with that a little bit the past week, in all honesty. And when that hits, It makes you so grateful for the times when you didn't have that going on, right? So when I do feel shitty about myself, or the way that, oh, maybe sometimes I can't cope doing things that other people can, even though we've all got our struggles, whether we're autistic or not, it reminds me that my body is primarily healthy, and girl, gratitude belongs here and nothing else. Definitely not judgment. We all know that we will look back on these days, no matter how old we are, and think, I wish I was more grateful. I wish I made more of that time. Yeah, the more the sort of months and the years are passing, I'm becoming less and less able to harm myself or others or animals. I'm completely focused on just being the best version of me, so that I am having the best possible effect on the world around me, and that I'm, I guess, a little bit making up for some things that I thought and I did when I was feeling bad about myself and drinking loads, and that can really bring the ego out as well. Alcohol is like a stage for the ego. A lot of the time we drink to connect, but what are we connecting to? We're not connecting to ourselves, that's for damn certain. And in that case, you do run risk of playing this egocentric game of like, well, then I can show up like this. Why do we want to show up like that? I don't want to show up like that. That's not me. That's some strange elevated Hollywood version that I'm wanting to create to fit some kind of a mold that I'm not even interested in. And I don't care about money in the way that I used to think I had to care about it. In the way I used to think like, oh, you've got to have these things or earn that to fit in. No. Do I want to have a comfortable life? Absolutely I do. I do, because I want to have my own little house and garden, so no one can fuck with that, so I have my own space. That takes money. Yeah, it does. I want to have linen sheets. I don't at the moment, but I'm grateful I have cotton sheets, but I'd like to upgrade that at some point because it's much better for us. That takes money. So like, yes, of course I have some goals when it comes to that, but not like I used to. Not like playing that rat race game that I never really even understood to begin with, but just felt like I had to fit. I notice, and please let me know if you feel this. This is probably one of the biggest points, and I kind of, again, I don't know whether I've gotten sidetracked with other stuff. I don't want to dilute this. When I woke up to my own bullshit, first of all, I want to say that I take responsibility for how I became whilst I was feeling bad about myself, because it kind of makes us project, right? And if there's anything that I can see now, is that this society, all the crazy stuff that's going on, and the way that we're being, the way that we're being to each other, or even social media, on Instagram, if you look at comment sections, horrible. People at each other's throats about stuff. We're all projecting our hurt at each other. We are a hurt society. Whether we are sensitive, whether we call ourselves autistic, or whether we are diagnosed, not diagnosed, whether it's ADHD, whether it's we're human beings having a human experience, and we are hurt and we are fed up, and unfortunately we are projecting it out at each other. Someone cuts in traffic, we're beeping our horn, we're furious at them. Our first emotion is anger, rather than, oh, I wonder what's going on in their mind where they think it's okay to do that. I wonder what's happened to them where their empathy has gone out the window and they are now acting as if they're the only person on this earth. What's happened? Because that is not our baseline. So this is why I talk about forgiveness and empathy so damn much, because if we don't, as an individual, start living by that and living from love, we are only feeding the problem. And I see a lot in the autism communities as well, talking about neurotypicals versus blah, blah, blah. And it's like, guys, it's not us against them, even though we've been literally pitted against each other to believe that from forces who are so-called in charge. I don't want to get too far into like talking about the government and those agencies and police and all of that, but let's be honest, we have been manipulated for decades, if not longer. into where we are now. I believe that there has been a plan to do that. And a lot of autistic people and sensitive people agree. And it's also our type of deep thinkers that have been specifically suppressed, belittled, and not supported. I think we are some of the most powerful people on this earth. You don't have to agree. I am not romanticizing autism. I am not romanticizing. However, I do romanticize myself and my reality, because by doing that and creating a loving place in my mind and in my outer world as much as I can, I am fostering more positive energy in the world. I do think there's a reason why deep thinkers and feelers are not in positions of power, because we sure as hell wouldn't be capitalizing off human suffering, animal suffering. We wouldn't be spilling sewage into the waters. We wouldn't be still in 2024 be seeing the famine across the world, the wars across the world that we are sadly experiencing. So I do think that sensitive people are powerful and much more necessary than how many of us feel. I think that we are potentially the change that the world needs, but first we need to empower ourselves. If we look at who I was, let's take me as an example. It's easy because I'm the one talking. The person I used to be when I was living in fear and anxiety, she was not having a positive impact on the world. She was not sitting here having this conversation, trying to empower other people. I woke up. I faced a lot of shit that I had done to me and I had done to others. That's imperative. We can't escape that. We've got to cry the tears and work through the shit. There's a lot of it, because if we can't see our own, then we're not going to be able to create the light that's necessary. There's a lot of people in spirituality, gurus, who want to be put on a pedestal and who come from a real egocentric place. And I am not interested in that. I think that all of us combined, healing each other, finding strength in each other, enjoying the parts of life that are still there for us to enjoy, music, nature, movement. It's so important. We've got to realise that most of us have a choice as well to move towards a life that feels good. We do. Not everyone. I get that. Some people are living in very scary scenarios and realities across the world. And I'm really sorry about that. And for that. And for the evil that's happening. But we've got to wake up. I know that we're tired, but we've got to wake up and start taking accountability as individuals and not just keep pressing ourselves to fit into a broken, toxic society that's been manipulated. This is modern warfare. Don't get it twisted. This is warfare in 2024. It's manipulation of society and societal structures. And we need to realize that we can unsubscribe to it in small ways, even if we can't completely, because there are rules to this that we have to play along with or we get in trouble, right? But there are ways to empower ourselves where we can see through it and beyond it. So to me, yes, autism is a label. It's a label that I use to open up the conversation, but it is not a label that I use to live by. I don't see myself as an autistic woman and that means XYZ. No, I see myself as a spiritual being who is incredibly sensitive and connected to the world in ways that a lot of people aren't, because for some reason they're super closed off to that. And so I don't want to be that way. I don't aspire to be that way. I instead in whatever small steps and small ways that I can, create a reality for myself that feels good for me. I think that's my main message, is that we do have the power to change small things, to let go of people and stuff that doesn't serve us, to choose a smaller, more comfortable life. We do, most of us have that choice. And if we're not taking that choice, then imagine being someone who doesn't have that choice in a part of the world where they don't have the choice. They are living in a war zone. Imagine them seeing our reality and the choices we could make, but instead we choose to feel bad for ourselves, to feel sorry for ourselves, and try and fit a societal mold that makes us unhappy. Something else has happened recently for me is that I found my way back to classical music. I have not been into classical music. Not since I was like a lot younger. It used to make me feel things. But at one point, I would hear certain songs, and especially classical songs, and it would make me feel so sad. It would make me grieve. So much so that I would have to turn it off. I've had moments where I've had to tell people to turn that song off because it's too much. But since choosing to feel again, I've realised that, first of all, most of those songs that made me feel really sad now don't have that effect on me anymore. I've either completely let it go, or it brings a flood of emotions where it makes me cry, but it's like a release cry. It's a release of like old trapped grief that wants to come out. And once that's done, I feel lighter and elated and in awe. And a lot of the times when this happens, it's when I'm out on a walk really early before most people are awake, because I don't like to be perceived too much. I like to be in my own space, doing my own thing, and not be sort of overlooked, because then I can get too much in my head. So I tend to go out around 5:45 in the morning with my headphones on, or without if I want to hear the bird song. And that's when I have these moments. Or it's at home when I just put the music on my speakers because I want to lose myself in the flow of whatever emotion. And that feels deeply spiritual to me, and it's like a cleanse. And I allow myself to feel whatever comes, instead of like, oh no, don't cry. I developed a lot of throat problems, like I think I mentioned in the first video, and I do believe it's from constantly swallowing down so much anxiety and stress and emotion that wanted to come up, but I just didn't let it. There's such a sense of freedom when you allow yourself to feel and to cry and or just to laugh or just be in awe. One of my favourite feelings is the sense of awe, because I felt such a sense of anxiety and terror for such a long time. Now, in the early morning, the sun's rising, the birds singing, and I'm just in awe. I can just cry. And it's hard to remain in that feeling, for a full day. That sure doesn't happen, because, reality sets in, as people call it. Well, both are just as much reality. Let's not forget that feeling in the morning is even more my reality than the stresses of everyday life. But I choose to focus on that, because where our attention goes, our energy flows. Our perception of our life is our reality. All of a sudden, I crave the most simple life where I can just be myself. And no, deciding that doesn't mean it happens like that. Like I said, it's small steps. But I create more and more of that reality every day with the intention that I set, with what I set my perception on. Even small things like having my favourite coffee mug, my little coffee ritual in the morning, where I actually have part water, cacao. Well, my partner makes filter coffee in the morning, but that level of caffeine has become too strong for me. So I take a couple spoons of cacao powder, I heat up some water and some coconut water with it. Coconut water, not coconut milk. And then I kind of mix that together with like a splash of the coffee. For some reason, that's just the drink that I'm enjoying right now. I kind of made it up, I think. But that feels nourishing to me, and I really enjoy the ritual of doing it. And at the same time, I tend to either listen to like some really relaxing music. High frequency music on Spotify, by the way, is really good for just relaxation as a whole, especially if you're someone who feels that morning anxiety like I did for years. It's taking me a long time to start to come down from that feeling of absolute dread in the evening and in the morning. But it's rare that I feel it now. But also I've been very lucky that I was able to make my life very small and simple so that I didn't have as much financial stress. That does not mean that we haven't had financial stress, because we have, probably on in the biggest way you can. You know, we have had times where we've thought, oh, are we gonna have somewhere to live? Literally. There's no sort of other way to put it other than I just feel a really deep spiritual connection now. I go out in the morning, I'm in awe at the sunrise, I take off my shoes, I can feel some sort of connection to the earth that I couldn't feel before when I would do the same in London. It's taken me a while to kind of get to the feeling that connection. It's taken the slowing down of my life across years, like months and years, but it still happened really fast if I think about it. Again, if you look back at my videos, you'll see the change in me, I think. But I feel such a connection, and I look for signs and synchronicities to show me that I'm on the right path, and I take comfort from that. That might not be for everyone, but it is for me. I notice now that if I look at the clock, for example, a lot of the time it's like 11:11, or it happens to be like 14:14, or I don't know, I'm kind of quite number orientated, but I know that also with the autistic mind, a lot of people would say that we look for patterns and stuff like that, but there's just a lot of synchronicities that I notice. Or I might be asking myself a question silently, or pondering about something in my life, or maybe there's a worry I have and I'll just ask for support in that moment. And a lot of the time I'll look down and there'll be like a feather, or I'll notice like a crow or something, which is really significant to me, or I find such a comfort from that, such a connection. And the more I lean into it, the stronger it feels, or stronger it becomes. And I'm also highly intuitive. I've learnt that that is something that I have always had, and that I have let guide me. I have definitely turned my back on it, and that's when things have not gone, you know, the easy route. And so there's been like a fork in the road. Maybe I've been on a date with someone and there's been huge red flags, and I've purposely gone, I see that, I'm gonna ignore it, I'm gonna do this anyway. And life's like, okay, are you sure? Because we're gonna have to go around and learn this all over again. Like, we're gonna be back here. If you really want to take the hard route, you can. But, you know, and it's true. You end up dating the same person with a different face, learning the same lesson over and over again. Well, having to go through the same lesson again, and usually it gets harder and harder until finally something goes, whoa, I see this now. This is not for me. Okay, I'm going to take the easier route. And the easier route doesn't always feel easier initially. But if there's something that I've learned, is that the more I lean into my intuition, the more I have found that it is always correct. As long as I'm not being sort of blinded by loads of other stuff, generally my intuition tends to guide me pretty solidly. And that's something that sensitive people seem to share in common, is an intuition, some kind of a knowing and an understanding of things in a way that some of the world don't seem to recognize. And again, if we can find that strength and that connection and put it all together, the ripple effect of that is massive, because it's our sort of brains that come up with solutions for things. that come up with kinder ways to do things, that show empathy and love. Now, some people may say, well, some autistic people don't have empathy and blah, blah, blah. Yes. Some neurotypicals, and again, I don't like labels, but I'm using it just to sort of to help the conversation, to make it slightly clearer, I guess what I'm trying to say. Some neurotypicals are raging narcissists too, for example. You get them in all walks of life. You get them in all types of people. There are those with empathy and those without. But I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about those of us who feel sensitive in a way that is a strength, that is actually a power. I don't like the term superpower. I just think it's a power. There's a power in it. And we can use it for good, but only if we realise it and only if we treat ourselves well and others. For the first time in my life, I can say that I am proud of myself because I know now who I am. For so long, I was rejecting myself. I was rejecting that little girl, little me. But little girl lost has been found. I found her. I looked for her. I chose her. I am her. And she deserves love and support. And so I parent myself. I am re-parenting myself. And I am now embodying all of the best traits of my mum that she showed me. That spiritual side of life that she showed me when I was younger, even though I put so much blame and hurt in that direction, actually, I now take so much strength and understanding from all of that. And I have such deep gratitude that I got to experience those things. Because I anchor myself in those experiences. I feel such awe for having gone to India in 97, before the digital rise, before, digital nomads were a thing, and it was built up even more. I'm so grateful that I got to see that and experience that. Whereas before I used to see a lot of hurt from being ripped from something and put in such a alien environment. No, I was still myself. Wherever I go, I carry home with me because home is on the inside. We've got to come home to ourselves. That's what that means. And it might not make sense at first how to do it, but it is what I said. In my opinion, in my perception, it is making small choices of how to nourish ourselves and create a reality that feels good for us, and to choose us and do more of what brings us joy. Go back to little me. Choose little me and say, take my hand. You are safe with me. Let's walk this life together. Because I think we've all been so fragmented. Like, there's you when you're younger, then there's you as a teenager, and then there's you as an adult, and you've got all these experiences and all this trauma and all this hurt and this and that and la la la. And it's fragmented, and it's kind of how we cope with it. We compartmentalize. I really struggle saying that word. I think I just said it the best I ever had. We need to bring it all together. And that starts by accepting and welcoming little me into the now and asking, what do you need? What do you need from me? I'm sorry that I haven't been there for you, but I'm here now. I don't know if I have covered what I wanted to, or if I have even portrayed the message as I was kind of trying to envision it. But I think the message is this, as a whole. We've been disempowered, and we've rejected ourselves, and we've all got very lost in all the messages coming towards us of what we should or shouldn't be doing. we can choose to unsubscribe from that now. We can choose to be ourselves in whatever small ways feels safe today. We don't need to take huge steps out into the world unmasked, and that feels terrifying, and frankly I wouldn't know where to start. But there are little pockets of time when we're on our own. Maybe we're in our bedroom, maybe we're out on a morning walk, when we can start to just look inwards and go, what does little me want today? What can I do more of that brings me joy? And what can I let go of in a small way that's going to make me feel more free? I'd love to hear if you relate. Thanks for hanging out with me again, pals. We are so much stronger than we've been made to believe, or how we've even told ourselves. And the world needs sensitive people to come into their power and to be playful and curious and alive and to feel and to forgive. I have so much gratitude and so much love for you. I hope that you can show yourself some of that love today. From my heart to yours,